Using Live Recorder with two Jenkins CI pipeline examples, here's how you can record and resolve failing tests and sporadic intermittent failures and use stress tests to invoke failures. Here's a simple Jenkins pipeline that builds an application, runs a set of tests, and, if the tests pass, pushes a release. In this case, some of the tests are failing. Two of the tests, in fact. This pipeline has been set up with an extra stage where failing tests are rerun under Live Recorder. Jenkins stores logs and other output of its pipeline runs as artifacts. Here, we can see the two Live Recorder recordings of the two failing tests stored as Jenkins artifacts. We'll look at replaying recordings in a moment, but first, let's look at another use case. Sometimes tests fail maybe 1 in 10 or 1 in 100 runs. People have different names for such tests, like flaky, intermittent, or sporadic tests. In either case, intermittently failing tests are a problem because it's very difficult to reproduce these failures in your dev environment and therefore very difficult to diagnose the underlying defect. Meanwhile, these failing tests create noise in your test results and can delay release into production. This Jenkins pipeline has been set up specifically to generate Live Recorder recordings of intermittently failing tests. One of our customers calls their version of this setup a sporadics farm, so we've named this pipeline accordingly. Each of a set of known failing tests, here we have 8 tests, is run under Live Recorder until it fails. Recordings of test runs that pass are not saved, but recordings of test runs that fail are stored as Jenkins artifacts. In effect, this pipeline has turned intermittently failing tests into 100% reproducible test cases. Let's download one of these recordings and see how it can be used to diagnose the underlying defect. Here's the recording loaded into an IDE, in this case, JetBrains CLion IDE. At first glance, this looks like a normal debugging session with local variables, stack frames, etc. But there's an important difference. We're not debugging this program running live, but debugging the recording of the program when it failed in our Jenkins pipeline a few days ago. There's another difference. Next to the usual step buttons, we have another set of reverse step buttons. We can use these to step backwards in time through the recording. This particular program is a toy example of a real pattern doing some calculations, in this case obtaining square roots, storing them in a data structure in memory in case they're needed again, and later retrieving them and sanity checking them. Here, the sanity check has failed after 2011 iterations. We were expecting the number 15, but received the number 0. We can continue to step back in time to see where the bad data came from. The bad data comes from the 90th entry in the data structure. Great, but when did that 90th entry get written? Remember that we're on the 2011th iteration of a loop, and the bad data could have been written at any point. With a conventional debugger, this would be difficult, but with the ability to go back in time, we can simply set a conditional watch point on the bad data and go straight to where the bad data is about to be written. Here, we can see the data being written into this cache line, and it's fairly trivial from here to work out what the underlying defect is. And that's how Live Recorder can help you to resolve all of your test failures faster, including your most challenging intermittent failures.